Hello and welcome to Grouchy Old Geeks, episode 14. My name's Scott, and joining me, as always, is internationally best-selling fantasy author Steve.
Hello. Don't forget, award-winning as well.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm going to blow my trumpet completely, you know.
I never get bored of saying that. Though, so correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you get an award for a translation into a different language?
No, not for the actual translation. No. Okay. No, it was the version in French.
Okay.
It was an award tied into the Hellfest heavy metal festival that takes place every year in France, and my French publisher put my book up against 5 others, and everybody voted. And amazingly, I beat the likes of Clive Barker and Joe Abercrombie in the public vote.
Amazing. How confident are you that the translator didn't just submit his own novel?
I think he just made mine even more awesome than it already was. Therefore, that's why they all voted and said, "Yes, it's brilliant." So, yeah, there you go.
Awesome. Right.
So,
what news?
Well, I'm going to start with some sad news. And sadly, since we recorded last, there's been a couple of bits. And then we'll go on to some more positive stuff. So starting with the furthest back, on June the 9th this year, we lost an absolute legend. He was the first on-screen television Batman, and this is, of course, Adam West, who passed away at the age of 88.
Yeah, really sad. Carried on acting throughout his whole life. So younger listeners, if we have any, probably know him better as Mayor West from South Park.
Family Guy.
Family Guy. But I remember, so I loved watching him in Batman, and my attitude towards it changed over time. Like when I first saw the Adam West Batmans as a kid. I never got that it was a joke, if you know what I mean. Like I was too young to kind of appreciate that it was played for laughs, and actually it was a brilliant comedic performance. And then as I got older, you could sort of see that the different elements that were in there, and he was just fantastic. The first in a long line of brilliant Batmen.
Absolutely, and he'd recently recorded a new animated version with some of the other people from the original cast, those who are still there, of course. But they went back and did it, and it was it's called. So he's in all sorts of things, as you mentioned. He was in Family Guy, and he's done voiceover work for a lot of years. He's appeared in things like The Big Bang as himself and other things. But yes, most famous perhaps. It started off as a millstone, as the TV version of Batman, but I think he just sort of went with it over time. And thought, well, okay, if that's what I'm going to be most famous for, then I'll lean into it. And so he's done lots of parodying himself and all this kind of thing. But yes, him and Burt Ward was the Cape Crusader and the Boy Wonder from the 60s TV show.
Yes, and if you've never read Burt Ward's autobiography, then it's a fantastic read. And let's just say that both Burt Ward and Adam West during the Batman era were very popular with the ladies. It's quite an eye-opening autobiography.
Really? I've not read that.
Yes. Oh, boy, yes.
Wow, okay.
It was the 60s after all. But
good point. Yes, good point. I was not expecting that, but okay.
Yeah.
So the other sad bit of news, which happened a lot more recently, unfortunately, is someone who's close to our heart in particular, is that the actor Stephen Furst passed away at the age of 63. Now, for many years, he died of complications to do with his diabetes, but I think it's something like 10 or even 15 years ago, one of his kidneys packed in and then the other, and without getting a kidney transplant, he would have had lots of problems. But a fan donated one of his own kidneys to Stephen Furst because he was a right to match. And he's, without it, he wouldn't be alive. So for a number of years, he's obviously a very grateful fan who's an enormous supporter of his work. I saw him. I didn't see. Have you seen Animal House? Because I don't think I remember it very well.
Yeah, I saw Animal House at an age when it would stick in your mind. Put it that way. So it's a classic comedy. Stars John Belushi,
Yes.
who we also lost some time ago. And it's just a very, very over the top sort of campus college comedy. I don't really remember him from that. I remember him much better. Obviously from B5, which we'll talk about. But I first remember him in Sin Elsewhere,
Right.
which was this sort of comedy drama about a hospital. So it predates things like ER and Casualty and all of these other things that you might know. This was, there were the hospital dramas before it, but this was kind of the archetypal hospital drama.
Yes.
Where he was one of the stars. So I definitely remember him from that, and there, he had lots of sort of light-hearted comedy moments in it, as well as doing more serious stuff as well. But of course, the reason that we're talking about him is Babylon 5, of course.
Yes, a number of actors from that show sadly passed away. Most recently before him was Jerry Doyle, of course. But I remember first seeing him in a film called The Dream Team that he was in with Michael Keaton and Peter Boyle, and this is like 1989, so just after St. Elsewhere.
Right.
So that's where I first saw him. And it's got some very big names. It says Michael Keaton, Christopher Lloyd, Peter Boyle, and Stephen Furst. They were the four main actors in it. And he plays a mental patient who goes out on a day trip to the baseball with the other patients, and comedy ensues. Do you remember this?
Yes, I remember this. They essentially stage a breakout, don't they?
Well, no, their doctor gets mugged, and they're left waiting for him in the van to come back. And then without him, they start wandering off and doing things around the city, and weirdness happens.
Yeah, it's vaguely coming back to me. But yeah, great actor. And of course, brilliant as Veer. It almost seemed like his role of Veer in Babylon 5. It almost felt like it originally started out as a minor character, and he was just so fantastic in it. They just seemed to grow his role more and more as the show went on. I don't know whether that is the case, but it was a role that he very much made his own. And the one of my favourite lines in Babylon 5. Isn't said by Veer, but is said by Londo to Veer, where he calls him a moon-faced assassin of joy.
I love the speech he gives to, help me, the villain.
Emperor Cartagia?
No, he wants to cut off his head and stick it on a pike.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Morden.
What's wrong with us? Yeah, Mr.
Morden. It's the heat. We should say at the moment it's like 30 degrees here, and we're British. We don't know how to cope with the heat. But yes, it's the speech he gives to Morden saying, I want to live just long enough until they cut off your head and stick it on a pike to warn all the people about meddling with affairs. And I would look up at your lifeless eyes and wave like this.
And he does this really funny, cute little wave, doesn't he?
Yeah, and of course he gets to do it. So he does the same little wave. It's so fantastic. But yes, he's a funny, bumbling, silly character. And as the show goes on, all of the characters evolve and become something else. And you see beneath the surface. And it's a fantastic, fantastic role for him. And all of the other minor characters in some way, with Veer and Lanier evolves and all of them. So, so sadly he's passed away age 63. Due to complications with his diabetes.
Yeah, shame. But leaving a great body of work behind him.
Absolutely. So, got some more positive news.
Yeah, so on a more positive note, I don't know whether you've seen this or not, but so Neil Blomkamp, that people probably know best from directing District 9, has been... he's been associated with a couple of doomed projects. So he was first meant to be working on something for Peter Jackson, and that fell through. And then Peter Jackson said, "Well, what do you fancy doing?" And then he ended up doing District 9, which was absolutely fantastic. People also know from directing Elysium as well. He was most recently associated with doing an Alien sequel. And he went. It got really far through to development. It almost felt like they were at the point where they were nearly going to start filming.
Yeah,
That's been pulled out from under him, and actually, it looks like now he's decided to cut out the middleman, and he's just producing his own sci-fi shorts. So what he's doing is he's posted his first one up on YouTube. It's called Racker. It's only about 20 minutes long. It stars Sigourney Weaver.
Wow.
And it's up on YouTube for free. But if you've got a Steam account, which is primarily like a game distribution platform, you can buy it on Steam for $3.99. But you get like a whole load of assets with it. Like you'll get like the soundtrack, but not just the soundtrack, like all of the elements that make up the soundtrack, and lots of like concept art and all sorts of other crazy stuff. And it looks like what he's doing is he's going to be producing a whole series of short films in order to get funding to turn one of them into a feature-length film. So he's kind of... I get the impression that he's maybe a little bit fed up with the rug being pulled out from underneath him, and he's just decided to go his own way. And his first effort in that direction is, to say the least, spectacular. Right,
okay. So you've seen this?
Yes. So it's on YouTube now. You can watch it for nothing. It's called Racker, Rakka. It's about an alien invasion, and it's awesome. The visual effects are amazing. The plot's great. Just absolutely brilliant. So only 20 minutes long as well. So it's free. It's on YouTube. It's directed by one of the greatest sci-fi directors of our age. There's no excuse not to go and watch it almost immediately after this. Listen to the end of the podcast, obviously,
of course,
and then go and watch it. And this looks like a new direction for him. I mean, he's planning to do several of these, and then I think just seeing which one sticks. So can't recommend it highly enough.
I remember Sigourney Weaver talking about working with him on an alien film. I remember seeing artwork. I remember seeing all this sort of stuff, and I think she said she would come back and do another one if they found something interesting to do. And it wasn't the same old, same old. And he came up with something that obviously appealed to her. Then there's all this artwork of Michael Bihn's character, like Scarred. Yeah. And he then talked about it as well in a couple of places and said, we're having talks. And it sounded like it was all going to go forward and be different. And then it died a death. And then we got the new, whatever one it is. Not Prometheus 2, The Covenant. Yeah. Which, have you now seen?
No, not yet. No, I'd like to, but I haven't seen it yet.
Right. I've got a friend who's seen it, and he is an enormous Alien franchise fanatic, and he said it's atrocious. He said it's probably the worst, and that includes the fourth one, which was a mess anyway.
Right.
So I really wish we'd got that other one with him doing something different, and all of the actors who were talked about engaged with that project. That would have been brilliant rather than something else. But anyway, yes, I'll have to check out Racker after this podcast, of course.
Yes, don't do it now, because that'd be terribly distracting.
Silence for 20 minutes. So, another bit of good news. We finally have an air date for Star Trek Discovery.
Yes.
So, in the UK, it's going to air on Netflix on the 25th of September, and it'll be weekly. But they're going to break it over Christmas, as it were. So you'll have the first 8 episodes will run until November. Then they'll have a break. And then the following 7 episodes will start in January. So September through to sort of November time. And then the rest in January.
That's just around the corner. There's not long to wait.
No, very, very... September's like, it's miles away. And think, well, actually, no, it's not. It's racing up very quickly.
And the trailer, I was actually kind of I'm a massive Star Trek fan, as everybody knows. I was kind of, you were hearing things about it, and you were thinking, maybe this isn't going to be so good. But once the trailer broke a few weeks ago, that got me all excited about it again. So I can't wait. I'm hoping it's going to be awesome.
You're all in now.
I'm all in. I might be eating my words come September, but for the moment, I'm excited.
Well, it was like when they did Enterprise. I really wanted it to be good. The trailers look interesting. I thought, okay, yeah, I'm in. And it wasn't great. And then it got a bit better, and then they cancelled it. So I'm hopeful. I really want this to work. I'm obviously like other people. I wish they'd gone forward instead of back. But they've done what they've done. I can't change that. So I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens next. But yeah, September. Let's talk about it again in sort of, I don't know, November time after the first run, and we'll see what we think of it and see where it's going after 8 episodes.
Cool. I've only got one more thing to mention, and it's not really news. It's just a couple of recommendations of films. If you haven't seen them, or the people listening haven't seen them, I watched them both in the last week, and I absolutely loved both of them.
Okay.
So let me know whether you've seen them or not. So the first one is Life.
Life. Remind me, which one's this?
So it stars Ryan Reynolds, and the plot is basically that of Alien, but on the International Space Station.
No, I've not seen it. I've seen the trailer. That's why I was thinking it sounded familiar.
Yeah, I loved it. It was way, way better than I was expecting it to be.
Right.
Genuinely, like, edge of the seat stuff through a lot of it. I thought it was awesome. I really, really liked it.
Okay.
And then the other one, and again, not sure. I don't think it didn't make a huge splash when it came out. I heard about it, but it's taken me a while to see it. Is Girl with All the Gifts?
No, but I've read the book.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
So, it's written by Mike Carey, who's done lots of other things, including comics and Lucifer and X-Men for many years, and he's done novels. And the latest one is under M.R. Carey, but it's Mike Carey. They actually shot some of the film round where I live.
Oh, interesting.
In the West Midlands.
Cool.
And Glenn Close and other people came down here and filmed it. So I've read the book. He's now done a second book, which is a sort of prequel called The Boy on the Bridge, which I've not read yet. But what did you think of the film of The Girl of the Gifts? I
loved it. So if you don't, so I won't say too much about it because it's definitely a film that you would benefit going in knowing as little as possible. I think because it's the opening is really, really intriguing, and it keeps you guessing all the way through, kind of, you know, where it's going. But the opening is particularly intriguing if you don't know anything about it. And I watched it knowing almost nothing about it.
Right.
So it starts basically with this classroom full of kids, including the girl in it who's the star, being basically in a school lesson. You know, doing typical things that kids do. You know, they're asking, you know, to the teacher, will you read us a story, or will you let us draw for the lesson, and all sorts of stuff like that. The only thing that's slightly different is that the teacher's dressed in a military uniform, and all of the kids are strapped to chairs, so they can't move at all. And when they get taken back to their room, they're taken back to their rooms at gunpoint. Even though these appear like perfectly normal kids, and then the plot kind of moves on from there. So I'm not going to spoil it, but it's awesome. And given that Glenn Close, like you say, in Oscar winner Glenn Close is one of the stars in it, the 12-year-old girl in it completely steals the show. She's amazing. It's an incredible performance. And it's a take on a familiar theme, but it's a completely original take, and I was enthralled by it. I thought it was an absolutely brilliant film.
And of course, I'm not going to spoil it, but the core of it is based loosely on real science as well, which is quite interesting. Mike has spoken about that it's one of these things that he saw and thought, oh, it's an interesting idea, and filed it away. And then years later, oh, right. And then he went away and wrote this book. So it's I think it's his most popular book to date.
Right.
And he wrote the screenplay that they then made the film from.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I've not read the book. I've heard good things about the book. But I really thought the film was brilliantly done.
Excellent. Well, I've got a couple of bits of news, but quickly just following on from that, Amazon in their foolishness gave me a 3 months trial, of Prime.
Okay.
So I'm currently burning my way through season 1 of Lucifer. I'd watched some of it already at Friends, but now I'm watching all of that. I started season 2 of Into the Badlands.
Right, of course.
I'm 2 episodes in. Nick Frost is very funny. There's a ton of films on there I want to watch. So, given that you've had Amazon for a while, have you got any recommendations?
Yes. It came out last year as part of their pilot season. So if you're not aware of that, what Amazon do is they'll film a bunch of pilot episodes, and then instead of them deciding whether they want them to be turned into a series or not, they just put them out on Amazon Prime, decide, see what the reaction is, and then decide whether to go to a series or not. This did go to a series, but it's not out yet. But the pilot episode is fantastic, which is Jean-Claude Van Johnson.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Oh,
so my friends, brilliant. My friend said, "Let's watch this." I was at his. We watched The Tick, and then we watched Jean-Claude Van Johnson. Both really good. I think they've both been picked up for a series.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, the series of The Tick has come out, and I've watched a few of them, and it's really good. I always keep comparing it back to was it the 90s, early 2000s TV show of The Tick, which I really loved.
Yeah.
But it's great. It stars Peter Serafinowicz, and he's really good. But Jean-Claude Van Johnson, to me, was just hysterical.
Okay, yeah. Well, sadly, I don't think it's going to turn up in a month. But if it does, I'll definitely watch more episodes.
And of course, so I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard good things about it. Yeah, and I know it's a book that you really love. Is American Gods?
Yes, it's incredible. I've been burning through them as well. And they can do things in the TV that you can't do in the book, and they're doing it very, very well. That's all I'll say.
Right.
But so far, what I've seen, really enjoying it. Absolutely amazing. The casting is spot on. If you've never watched it before or read the book, my friend hadn't read the book. He started asking me questions, and I was like, well, keep watching it, and then if you don't know, ask me afterwards, because it does reveal things as it goes along. There's a lot of kind of mystery at the beginning, and there's an Envy of Man character who's kind of like the audience going, what, why, who, and he's asking all the right questions, and gradually they sort of reveal what's behind the curtain. But yes, absolutely fantastic stuff.
Awesome.
Right, 2 quick bits of news. The Sherlock team, of course, is Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat.
Yeah.
They did Sherlock Holmes. They previously did Jekyll, which was a thing based on Jekyll and Hyde. Their latest thing, apparently, is they're now going to do the same for Dracula as a TV-type miniseries thing.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
I don't know, because I enjoy Sherlock, and I enjoyed the Jekyll and Hyde thing that they did. It was quite good, but Dracula's very timely. It's very... I'm not sure it'll work in a modern thing. I know they've done versions like the Gary Oldman one and all this kind of stuff, and Blade works because it's modern, but it's so different with vampires and stuff. So I don't know, but I think their idea is to do a mini series, and if it works, they'll do several of them, sort of 3 or 4 hour pilot, 3 or 4 hour episodes, and just sort of do it like that. So I don't know. I it's going to have to be really special to impress me. What about you?
I think I'll be honest. I'm pretty neutral. I don't really care either way. It's not like with the new Star Trek coming out, on the day that's released, I'm going to be sitting there in my uniform by myself. I don't want anybody speaking to me. All the curtains and blinds are going to be closed. I'm going to be in my, the second it comes out, I'm going to be pressing play. And there's a few things, like, for example, I really don't want to get into this discussion, open a can of worms, but there's like the remake of Ghostbusters, where I'm like, I just have no interest. I think the first one was perfect. I don't really care about the second one. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't really exist. This it's hard to express an opinion, positive or negative. Like, if it comes out and people like it, then I'll watch it. If it doesn't seem that great, then I'm not going to bother. But it's hard for me. It's hard for me to stir up any excitement about it, positive or negative, to be honest. You know, the stuff that they do. I really loved Sherlock when it first came out. I kind of feel like it's run its course a little bit now. I thought the last season of it started to edge way too much into sort of soap opera territory for me. You know, it became a show about the characters rather than the characters doing interesting, cool things and solving mysteries and stuff like that. So I'm sure what they do will be very well done and very slick because they're awesome at doing stuff like that. But it's hard to say in advance whether it will engage me, and I'm not. I'm definitely not going to be like there on day one checking it out. I don't think.
Fair enough. Last bit of news from me, it's a comic-related one, but it's quite different, it's quite interesting as well. So we know that DC Comics license people to produce all sorts of things, you know, pajamas and paper plates and whatever else it might be. But I don't know that they've ever licensed anybody else to do a Batman comic before. Or no, if they have, not recently. So there's a European artist by the name of Enrico Marini who's done all sorts of comics. Like there's the Scorpion from Cine Books. He's worked on that before. And his work in outside of America, there's obviously lots of different types of comics and the sort of not the monthly 22-page, 20-page format thing. It's a very kind of different thing. So he's now got the license from DC and his publisher, Dargaud, I think it's called. They're commissioning and they're going to publish an original Batman graphic novel written and drawn by him.
Wow, interesting.
So the book isn't named yet, but will be published in 2 volumes. I suspect this will be more like the 70 to 80 page thing you typically get in a European comic. So the first volume will be published in November 2017, so this year, and the second one in spring next year. So it's very, very unusual and very, very different. And I suspect there'll obviously be an English translation as well. But the artist has said that Batman is one of his favourite superheroes since childhood ever, and he's looking forward to having a go recently, getting a hold of it. So I don't know if they're going to publish it and then translate it for the English audience as well, or they'll do it at the same time. I'm not really sure how it's going to work, but it's just such an unusual bit of Batman news, really.
Yeah, it is really curious that they've made a decision to do something like that. Really cool. Like it's probably an effective way of getting a really different take on Batman.
Yeah.
But yeah, really interesting decision. I wonder whether they're testing the water and deciding whether, if it works, whether they're going to start doing that with like Superman and Wonder Woman and their other big characters.
Probably, because they're always trying to do new things. So there's the number of... so obviously, in America, comic books are still published monthly. You get a 20 or 22-page comic, and then they collect them in trades. DC also did this thing called Earth One, where a graphic novel hardback would come out, and it was about 100 or 120 pages. And they did this for Superman, and JMS wrote it. And it wasn't a retelling so much as a modern version of it, but starting from the beginning. And it did really, really well. So well that they said to JMS, right, we want you to come off the other books you're doing and start working on the next one. And because it's sold as a hardback, not, monthly floppies, it goes straight into bookshops as well as into comic shops. And that shifted a lot of numbers for them, a lot. So they said, go and do another one. So he did another one. And whilst he was doing that, they said, right, let's do a Batman one. Let's do a Teen Titans one. Let's do a Wonder Woman one. And they're all getting big name creators, fantastic artists, and they're starting to do these about one a year. JMS has done 3. I think he's now moved on to do other things. But this, again, is something that, as you said, if this works, they might say, right, who wants to have a go on Superman? Who wants to have a go on, I don't know, Green Lantern or Green Arrow or something? But this sounds like it's a separate adventure rather than a retelling.
Yeah, really cool idea. Really like the idea.
Very, just, it's a story that's going to appeal to a broad audience of DC fans, he said. An original Batman story. So, very interesting.
Yeah.
But, yes, I'll keep an eye out for that in November. And maybe talk about it in December and next year too.
I'll get to it once I've read the remaining 269,800 comics that I'll have to get through on Marvel Unlimited.
Oh, we forgot. What's happening with your two updates? So quickly, what's happening with your exercise update?
Yeah, so I've taken. I had a really, really bad cold a couple of weeks ago, and I was ever so ill. So I've taken a couple of weeks out, but I'm back into it again. Still doing the nerd fitness.
Good.
Still completing the missions. Still enjoying it. I assume you're still doing your. All the different things that you were doing. The was it a rowing machine or cycling machine?
I run and row, and I wasn't running outdoors really because I was just not enjoying it. And I had my phone, all the rest of it. I'm now embracing the outdoors. I've bought headphones that loop over my ears; they won't pop out when I'm running. I've bought a Velcro thing that you put around your arm, and put your phone in. Listen, there you go. There's a Velcro. So you put your phone in, and it has the running app and all that kind of thing. So I've stepped up the kit. I'm now ready, once the temperature isn't enough to melt the bloody tarmac on the road, to go back to running outdoors.
We should say that we're recording this on both the longest day of the year and the hottest day of the year in 40 years.
Yeah, so we can't cope. We can't cope with this heat. That's why we're probably sounding a bit frazzled. We don't know what to do. I'm sat currently in a paddling pool whilst recording this.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let me just say, everybody should be very grateful that this isn't a video podcast right now.
Absolutely. So the other thing is the comics. What's happening with your Marvel read of everything ever?
Yes, it's so. I'm a little bit like a kid in a candy shop at the moment. So people that didn't listen to the last episode, I've got a subscription to Marvel Unlimited after never having really read Marvel before.
Right.
You gave me a bunch of brilliant suggestions, like Old Man Logan, Planet Hulk. I've now read Planet Hulk.
Right, and
thought it was fantastic. Loved it. It almost cheapens the new Marvel movie coming out, because obviously there's a Planet Hulk inspired bit in it.
Yes.
But if they're not doing a whole movie about Planet Hulk,
nope.
Then why put? It doesn't deserve a 2-minute cameo.
Well, the good news is you can watch the animated version of Planet Hulk on Netflix. It's most of the story, so you can watch that. But yes, you've got the Planet Hulk inspired thing in Thor Ragnarok, which comes out in November. So have you read Old Man Logan?
Yes, I have, and I thought that was awesome.
What do you think?
Well, loved it. Absolutely brilliant. But I also love the film equally, I think.
It's different, though. You see the inspirations, but I think that is probably it's one of my favourite Wolverine stories ever, I think. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's like the Unforgiven, really, of Wolverine comics.
Yeah. I loved it. Both the comic and the film, like I say. You gave me a whole bunch of other suggestions. So Daredevil by Brian Bendis.
Yes.
Thor by Jay. All of these other things. Unfortunately, like I say, a bit of a kid in the candy shop at the moment. That I've just seemed to be reading all sorts of random comics. One of the things that Marvel Unlimited does really well is they have these like curated collections.
Right.
So it's like, how about delving into this character? And it won't necessarily do a long run, but it will show you like the first appearance and then like the first major story and then a whole bunch of things. So I've been reading, again, never having read this before, I've been reading through their sort of curated collection of Black Panther comics at the moment. So from his first introduction in Fantastic Four to, a few extra things, which was in 1963, and then a few extras and things like that. So but also I've just been reading, random, bits of Star Wars and bits of Spider-Man and stuff like that. So I'm kind of, it's all a bit random and higgledy-piggledy, but it's just there's so much good stuff there. I'm kind of absorbing none of it because I'm not reading runs of things. But it's like I've discovered. Well, I have discovered this for the first time after not it being on my radar for my entire life, and it's really exciting at the moment. It's ridiculously cheap for what you get. And I've got a bunch of things loaded offline on my phone. So when I've got a spare 2 minutes, I'll just go in on my phone and then just read some stuff. It's been great. I'm really, really pleased that I shelled out the cash for it. I was in two minds about it at the time, just because it was delving into something new, but I'm super excited about it, and loving Marvel Unlimited.
I think you need to get into a big run. Like, you need to start on whether it's Black Panther or Daredevil or something, but start at the earliest thing and then just start reading through, and soon your knowledge of the character will build over time, and I think that'll be a good thing as well.
Warning, ship crash landing. You have 60 minutes to enter the archives and recover significant cultural artifacts.
Welcome back. For our main feature, we're going back in time to the return of something we did in the past, a previous incarnation and a previous podcast we used to do called Crash Landing. So this is where, similar but not the same as Desert Island Disc, where the Earth has been destroyed, you have no choice but to get into a rocket, and you're being sent off to another land, another planet to live. And you have to choose some of the favourite things that you want to take with you, but also to preserve for humanity. And this could be TVs, books, films, music, and we're going to talk about some of these things that Scott is going to choose. So I've wedged him into the rocket. The Earth is a blackened husk. I'm like in Planet Hulk. I'm going to fire you off to a lovely planet, but unfortunately you've sent the rocket spinning off course, and you land on a water planet. With fishmen that all resemble Kevin Costner. So.
That's fine. I have no problem with that.
So the easy options are things like we probably talked about before, like a TV show that you would take with you.
Yeah.
I know what that would be. Go on.
Yeah, so this would be... So I've kind of tried to think of these from 2 points of view. One is that these are the things I would like to be marooned with. But I've also tried to think of what would I want to preserve for future humanity.
Yeah.
And in actual case, for the TV show, it's the same show in both instances, and that is Star Trek: The Next Generation. And I think it's for a lot of reasons. I think people will look at. I think it's. I'm rewatching it at the moment, which isn't a surprise because I'm constantly rewatching it. But it's the show. I think it's a brilliant show. I think people will maybe look at things like, Battlestar, the remake of Battlestar Galactica and Firefly and all of these other great shows, and think that TNG hasn't aged very well. But it's the show. For me, there'll never be a better show. For me personally, there'll never be a better show, because it's the thing that I derive comfort from. Mm-hmm. It's the thing that we've all had difficult times in our lives when we've been down and depressed and things haven't been going well for us. And for me, TNG is the thing that I visit in that time, because it isn't just great sci-fi, and it is great sci-fi, but it's about friendship and camaraderie and belonging, and it's about the relationship between the characters, and it's an overwhelmingly positive view of the future, right? We don't tend to get shows like that anymore. It's all about conflict.
The aliens are going to kill us.
Yeah, and people can't be, Battlestar Galactica, for similar concept on paper, they're on a spaceship, they're travelling to different worlds and things like that. But that's all about, nobody can be trusted.
Yeah.
And you never know who's going to stab you in the back, and there's intrigue and things like that. The Next Generation is it's a utopian view of the future. And actually, I kind of feel like we need a bit more of that. We need a bit more of this kind of this almost outdated version of the future now, where it's about people working together in harmony and things like that. And that's why I would want to preserve it for future generations, because it is so positive. And it's there's a line in Futurama when Fry is talking about Star Trek: The Next Generation, and he says, there's a whole bunch of funny things, but he says, there was a time in my life when I didn't have any friends, and Star Trek made me feel like I did. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so special to me. I just love The Next Generation. And Star Trek as a whole, but specifically The Next Generation. I just think it's such an uplifting thing to watch.
Yeah,
and I love it.
It's an aspirational image of the future where there's various episodes where they go back in time and meet other people, and they sort of have to explain they're from the future, and they say, well, what do you do for money? And they say, well, we don't have money.
Yeah.
Well, how do you do this? How do you do that? And it's like they've moved beyond. Mm-hmm. They're still human beings. They're not robots. Haven't got eyes in the back of their head or anything. So they've evolved, but not in the way that people would think in the future. We haven't physically changed, and yet their society is different. The structure is different. There's no disease. There's no famine. There's no war. And it's what next? So you look outwards, and I think we definitely need a lot more of that. When in times they've looked at cancelling the space program, cancelling manned mission to Mars and to the moon and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, having something that's positive about the future, that's looking out and saying, go out there and do great things, and it can inspire and has inspired generations of scientists to create things that they saw were fictional, and they've made them a reality. Absolutely. Well, I want more of that.
And there's a line, going back to the money thing, there's a line, the end of season 1 of The Next Generation is called The Neutral Zone. And they unfreeze a bunch of people, obviously from the 1980s, right?
Yes.
Because, they were cryogenically frozen and shot into space. And one of the people that they unfreeze is this businessman. And he's like, what do you mean there's no money? And he's like, how do you try and how do you improve, how do you try and get on in life? What if it's not about the accumulation of wealth, what is it? And Captain Picard says something along the lines of to him, the challenge in the future is to push yourself. The challenge is just to be the best person that you can possibly be. And that to me epitomizes Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's about the best view of humanity, and it is unrealistic, and it is dated, and it is silly in lots of ways, but it's still a message and a philosophy that is nice to think about from time to time, and is nice to visit.
Absolutely.
I love it. It just means so much to me.
I've just finished rewatching that because it's on Netflix. I'm now on to DS9.
Right.
And that show is surprising me in lots of ways. It really is. Things I'd forgotten, things I'd completely blanked out, things that surprised me, things I've noticed this time round and thought, is that... the fact there's an episode in season 4 where Kira ends up pregnant because of this thing with O'Brien's wife and blah, blah, blah. And it turns out the reason for it is behind the scenes she was having a relationship with Alexander Siddig and she got pregnant from that. I didn't know that. At the time, because of the internet, now I can find all this stuff out. But now, because I know that, when I look at certain episodes and they're on screen together, around that time I'm going, there is something there. There is. And things like Gul Dukat, I always hated him the first time around. Now, I actually think he's the most interesting character on the show. Until later on when they make him into a panto villain. But up to then, he's the most layered and the most fascinating character there is. And Mark Alamo must have had a brilliant time playing him.
DS9 is a brilliant show. I absolutely love Avery Brooks. He's such a different commander to Patrick Stewart.
He punches Q in the face.
Yeah, he just so Avery Brooks. So Commander Sisko just comes across to me as like a borderline psychopath. Do you know what I mean? Like he's caring, and he does the right thing. But there's just that look in his eyes that makes you think he could snap at any moment.
True.
And he performs it in such a way that it looks like he can barely contain himself all the time. And I think he's brilliant. It's such a fantastic show. It owes a lot to two things. It owes a lot to the death of Gene Roddenberry.
Yep. Because
they started to introduce a lot more conflict. It became a lot less utopian. And it obviously owes a lot to Babylon 5. Because Babylon 5 was on at roughly the same time, and they not necessarily outright stole storylines, but the concept was very, very similar in lots of ways.
Maybe once I've finished it, we'll do a talk about it. Because there's other things I picked up on and talk about. But anyway, let's move on from that. So, quickly, I know which film you're going to choose, but I want to know why. So tell us what the film is.
So the movie is Blade Runner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult to kind of say why, but it was a movie that as a teenager I used to watch literally every single day.
Wow.
And it's something, and it's one of those things. I've got multiple copies of it because they've bought different versions out over the years. And there's just something. I just think it's one of the. To me, I think it's like the Casablanca of science fiction, in the sense that Casablanca was just one in a whole long line of studio films, but all of the things just happened to come together at the right time and make something that was greater than the sum of the parts. And Blade Runner is that to me. Blade Runner to me is a perfect film, and they had terrible trouble whilst filming it. And Ridley Scott fell out with the crew, and the crew hated him, and there was all of these other problems going on. But there's just the visual effects, and the brilliant score by Vangelis, and the direction and the script, and everything just comes together to make something that to me is almost perfect. It's like if you, and I've done this quite a lot. If you listen to it. Like I've got an MP3 of the entire movie, and if you listen to the movie without the visuals there, it works perfectly as almost kind of like a concept album almost. Right. The way that just everything comes together, and it's just this amazing realised world that I just think it's a perfect example of a film, and I just love it. It's a movie that I still watch several times a year, and I just think it's fantastic. I don't know, what do you think of it?
I do like it. I don't think I saw when it first came out. I think I missed it for whatever reason, and back then when it came out, it wasn't something that you could just go and rewatch instantly. Yeah, you have to wait until it came out the video den, and then years later Blockbuster, for those who remember such a thing. But I've seen it at least half a dozen times since, and some of the moments, the most famous ones, like the Roy Batty speech and all that kind of thing, stand out. There's some great acting in there. There's all of the controversy about what the film is actually about and the ending, and there was a disagreement between Ridley Scott and Harrison Ford and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's a fascinating piece of pop culture in terms of film and its place in history. As a science fiction film, I think it's really interesting. I really like the concepts that it's digging into. But I'm also nervous of the sequel because it's one of these things that I'm not sure they should go back, because although it won't change the original, it may set some things in stone from the original that are better off not being nailed down. And that worries me that in the future, if I go back and look at Blade Runner, I'll be there going, but they've done this now in the sequel, and I can't blot it out as well.
Yeah, it's kind of, one of the mysteries is whether Deckard is a replicant or not, and there's evidence. There's evidence in both directions. Yes. And then you don't want to go and watch Blade Runner 2449 in the first 10 minutes. It's going to be, hi, my name's Deckard, the replicant. It's like, okay. Or the opposite way. It's like, you don't want to. I trust Denis Villeneuve. I think he's going to do a really good job of it. And even if he does a terrible job of it, it's not going to take anything away from the original. But it is a movie that kind of feels like it shouldn't have a sequel.
It really does. Yeah. So it's like everything else. They won't leave stuff alone. If they can make money out of it, they will. That's the only kind of principle in Hollywood. But okay. So let's talk about music. What music would you want to take with you to this alien planet? Okay, so I'm not a big music listener. Music has just never really been a big part of my life. But there is
one genre of music that if I do listen to music, like on a car journey or something like that, that I always tend to go back to. And I don't think we've ever really talked about music before.
Not really, no.
So it'll be interesting to see what your reaction to this is. But I like the sort of music that's probably perfectly summed up by the work of Pink Floyd.
Right.
So I don't know how much you know about them. I don't know whether you listen to them or what you think of them or anything like that. So wow, how much do you know about Pink Floyd?
A little. I have listened to some of their music. They're obviously of a certain an era that's before both our times, really.
Yeah.
But they're not. So, I don't think I actually got an album of theirs. I might have The Wall.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've got Dark Side. Is Dark Side of the Moon theirs?
Yep, that's right.
So, see, I'm rattling off a couple of album names. I'm aware of them as part of my old kind of pop culture, but I don't. No, they're not a big thing for me. So, what is it about them to you? Is it just them in particular, or that kind of?
So I kind of went to Pink Floyd because that's kind of descriptive of the sort of music that I like to listen to. But it's more. So Pink Floyd isn't. It's not like pop music. So it's not. It's not sort of like guitars and drums particularly, and like, you know, very lyrical things. Pink Floyd is much more like it's kind of like a movie score to some extent. You know, when they released albums, a lot of the time they never released singles from the albums because the album was often just one long, large track that kind of was, you know, had a concept and a theme behind it. You know, so things like The Wall is there telling a story. And a lot of their other albums are kind of trying to tell. There's a narrative element to their stuff, so it's almost like it's designed as music, but it's almost like a film score to a film that doesn't exist. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I kind of like the fact that it's longer, and it's you know, the focus is on the music and the layers of the music, and the fact that it was very technologically innovative for the time. I think is really interesting. So it's the fact that it's not pop music, which I don't really like, or classical music. It's the fact that it's more. It almost has, like I say, this sort of cinematic feel to it. So the other sorts of music that I like is things like Tubular Bells by Mike Oldfield, which again is that kind of it's one complete track for the whole album basically, and it you know, he did lots of innovative techniques at the time to do it, and it's more about kind of a whole concept rather than just like a 2.5 minute song or whatever. And along with that, you know, I do quite like film scores. So I was talking about the Blade Runner score, you know, a few moments ago, and actually, I like that Vangelis kind of instrumental sort of a work. But it was hard to, because I'm not a big music guy, it was kind of hard to pick. But if I could think of anything, I would probably try and preserve the works of Pink Floyd.
Yeah, interesting.
What sort of stuff do you listen to? Because we really have never talked about this, I don't think.
No,
it's going to be Katy Perry, isn't it?
No. Firework. No. I'm actually sad that I know some of her songs. It seeped into my brain from a radio. I write. So when I write, I listen to soundtracks because there's nothing with lyrics usually. But I've always liked soundtracks anyway. So I've got dozens of them, and I put them on, and they help me generate a certain mood or put me in a certain mind space in order to write. But sometimes I just listen to them because I like them. But my taste is really eclectic. So one of the biggest bands for me ever is REM. And another one, I've got every album and all that kind of jazz. The other one that's there against before my time, but he's probably one of the top three musicians for me, is Bruce Springsteen.
Interesting. So somebody that I know almost nothing about.
So he started before I was born. And he is, I don't want to say he's like Pink Floyd, but he's of the same generation. He's now 63, I think, 64. and he's a blue collar guy who writes songs, and he's done rock stuff, he's done instrumental stuff, he's done folk kind of stuff, and all of his albums have a very particular kind of flavor. And I came to his music in a really strange way that'll make sense to you, but not to anybody who is under 30 probably. Do you remember when he used to have a CD club in the post?
Yeah.
So you have a catalogue, and you'd pick 3 or 4 CDs, and they'd send them to you on a special deal. I picked one that had the most songs, and it was a double album, and it was the greatest hits to Bruce Springsteen. My parents were like, "Really? You want that?" I was like, yeah, bang for my buck. I want that. They were like, all right. So I got that, and it had about 30 tracks on, and I played them to death, to absolute death. This was me. It's probably 12. And they're like, really? Bruce Springsteen? But no, I like it. I do like it. And I just grew to love it over time. And since then, I've been to see him twice in concert.
I'm sure there are other songs of his that I know, but the only one that I can think of is Born in the USA.
Yeah. There's other ones I could mention. You would go, oh, yeah, is that his?
Right.
Oh, yeah, is that his? And like, he's written a lot of other songs that people made famous, but I prefer his versions. So there's things like Because of the Night, which was a Patty Jenkins thing from the 70s. So he wrote it originally and released it, and it did okay. And then she released it, and it did amazing, and that kind of became a trademark thing. But yeah, I got to see him about 3 years ago in concert, and that was incredible. It was 3.5 hours of him on stage.
I've actually heard that. I've heard that he's amazing in concert, and that he does really long shows as well.
Yeah, he never comes off. He never has he has a band with him, but he just doesn't go off stage. And so he, at his age, I was thinking, oh, wow, I haven't got the energy to do this at my age. And he's there drinking water, and he walks into the crowd, and everyone's got beers and stuff. And he gestures at one guy, and the guy just gives him his beer, and he just drains it and then carries on singing because he's so thirsty. But absolutely incredible live. Fantastic. But yeah, really eclectic.
Yeah,
taste.
interesting.
I've got the big things that I love as well. But anyway, this is your crash landing, so let's get back to you. So the next section we're going to say is computer games. These are obviously both big thing for both of us. We've played them for decades.
Yes. So there was one computer game that I haven't played for a while that I was going to pick, but I think will almost certainly be disallowed for obvious reasons.
Right, what was it?
So I've got alternative ones. So my first pick was going to be World of Warcraft.
Well, you can't play that by yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Closed server.
Yeah,
there's no MMO on this. There's no kind of network on this planet.
Yeah. So given that humanity's been wiped out, I think an MMO isn't going to work.
No.
So there's a couple of alternatives. I think you might be shocked with the choice. So I was thinking of all of these possibilities. Like, I love the Grand Theft Auto series. I've just finished The Witcher, which I think we talked about.
Yeah.
I'm playing Just Cause. I love all these games with like a really strong narrative to them. But actually, I think if I'm going to be marooned forever, then possibly the game that I would pick, that I haven't played for a while, but I've invested a fair amount of time into in the past, is actually Minecraft, believe it or not.
Yeah, not too surprised, actually. Given what you do in the game and building and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that there's an element of it. It's like Lego, basically. You can build. You can construct your own towns and cities. People have done absolutely ludicrous things in it. But the fact that it's very, very relaxing to play. A game similar to Minecraft that I'm playing at the moment is Stardew Valley.
Right, I think you mentioned this to me, actually.
Yeah,
didn't you?
so it's basically the game is you inherit a farm, and it's just you're basically just constructing your farm. So you're ploughing it, and you're digging it, and you're planting plants, and you sell them for money, and then there's really no point to it. And the same in Minecraft. But actually, there's just something incredibly relaxing about it, and you're actually building something that's your own as well. So I think if I'm going to be stuck with one game for all eternity, it would be something like Minecraft, where that is just like a construction set where you can build kind of anything you like. So it's different from the games that I tend to play, but it's probably the thing that would keep me amused for the most amount of time, because it is Lego and it's a train set and it is all of those other things. So yeah, possibly a strange choice, but I think I would find Minecraft relaxing, as I was the only person on the whole planet.
I know it's an MMO, but you'd probably like Albion, the other MMO that's out at the moment, because that's very much a sandbox kind of thing where you're building. I mean, it's not like Warcraft where there's quests. You can go off and do the odd quest, but most of it is just a giant sandbox. You build your own island, you plant crops, you raise cattle, you go out and collect materials, you come back, you expand your island, you sell stuff on the auction house. I mean, you can just pick a trade and do that. You can do lots of trades. So but there's, you build a house, you build a bigger house, you get staff to help you do things. But it's obviously not the same as Minecraft, but a similar sort of thing.
Yeah, that sounds really cool, actually. So when you say it's an MMO, do you mean that you build a house and you build land and you have staff and you construct all of this and then other people come and burn it to the ground?
No.
Okay.
So you can join guilds and you build guild islands, and then you can fight other people. But I've got a private island which you purchase, and then you can purchase extra land to make it bigger, and you've got a certain number of spots on it to build things. So you basically can restrict who can come to your island. If you go out in the wild and you're collecting materials, there are safe zones, there are yellow zones, and there are red zones where people can knock you off and kill you and steal all your stuff. But you could just stick to the safe areas. But on your own island, nobody can get there unless you give them permission. And the bigger the house you get, the more NPCs you can have. So if you're a lumberjack and you collect wood to build various things, you can hire a lumberjack to go out and do stuff to collect wood in addition. And you can hire, a skinner to go out and be a game hunter and do all this kind of stuff. So it's a real sandbox game with some questing, but not a lot, but with a big focus on dungeons and guilds. And there's no quest chains, really. Not really.
That actually sounds really awesome. I'm on the website now.
So I'm on the beta. I've been on the beta since it began. And because I signed up for it, when the game comes out officially, I'll get the final version for free. But it's going to be a monthly... I think it's a monthly fee, for everybody else when it comes out.
Right.
But yeah, it's there's no end to it as such. You can just keep... If all you want to do is do raiding, then you fight stuff, get money, buy the best tier of gear that you can, go and do more dungeons, get more money. And if you just want to do raiding and dungeons and guild stuff, you can do that. Mm-hmm. If you just want to use the game as a sandbox to have a farm, raise some animals, but go and sell the stuff, do some more of that, you can do that as well. But if you want it for like a questing World of Warcraft type thing with quest chains that take you across the world, that's not what the game is for, which I thought there was going to be some of that, but they've never said, no, we're going to do that. That's not part of their plan.
Awesome. There's a very strong chance I'm going to buy this when we stop talking.
Well, now that I know the kind of thing that you like, that you're into, yes, it should be a good one.
Awesome. Right,
so the last category, an odd one, but you brought this one up. So a radio play or radio presentation.
Yeah, so as somebody like I said, that doesn't really tend to listen to music all that often. What I do love is things like radio plays and audio books and stuff like that. So I have an Audible account. Obviously, I own Stephen Arion's trilogy of well-known fantasy books on audiobook. But I love... So there's been a really recent series come out of Alien audiobooks that are amazing. And I've got a complete full cast version of Ender's Game, which is brilliant. It's about 8 hours long. But the thing that got me started with radio plays and audiobooks and things like that I love, and again still listen to this day, is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Of course.
I love Douglas Adams. It's hysterically funny. It's so clever in its humour that still now I'll listen to it and I'll get jokes that I'd never got before. It's sort of that dense, and that some of the wordplay is that clever. And I just love it. It's a sort of a post-scarcity economy. Again, they're out in the universe. They can go wherever they like, and it's just this crazy, crazy world out there. So it's this sort of very strange, very humorous, but sort of very positive vision of the universe as a whole as well. And I love it. I think it's so funny. I've listened to it so many times.
There's something that's coming out that I think will appeal to you. I'm like you. I listen to the I can't really do audiobooks, but I like audio dramas, the Big Finish type things. And they're doing a new one. They've done, dozens of Doctor Who's with many of the Doctors, and they've got some of them back whose TV version is finished and so on. But they're doing a new one for something that we're both fans of, that had a recent TV resurgence, but they've never done an audio drama before. And they're doing it as like a missing episode of the TV show.
Right.
So that they can bring back various cast members who are no longer in it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, what's this?
They're doing an X-Files one.
Oh, yes, I have heard about this, yeah. Yeah,
they're bringing back the lone gunman as well.
Yeah,
because,
brilliant.
Spoiler for like 20 years, the characters die in the show at some point later in the show, but they're bringing back Langley Byers and Frohickey, and they're getting Dave Duchovny, Gillian Anderson, and the Cancer Smoking Man, William B. Davis, and Mitch Pileggi as Skinner, and all of these people they're going to get back. I don't think they're getting Doggett and the other people back, but I think this is the first time they've done an X-Files one. And it's going to be like a missing episode, which I really want to listen to.
Yeah, what a brilliant idea.
I think if it works, they might do more of them. But because the TV show that came back was okay, but it wasn't great. But this, just doing like a missing episode, would be brilliant.
Yeah, awesome. Right, so that's my... So that's what I'm choosing to maroon myself with.
Yep.
We will do you at a later date.
Yes, I'll have to have a think.
Yeah.
We'll do it in a few months' time. Okay, so we're absolutely sweating here.
Yeah.
It's very, very hot and sticky. I'm going to go and jump into a tiny paddling pool to cool off.
Yeah, good idea.
Kick out next door's kids. Get out! My turn. You don't need it. But... that's it for this episode. So if you want to get in touch with us, come on to the Geek Syndicate website, geeksyndicate.co.uk. Come on to the Facebook group and talk to us there. Let us know what stuff you might take if you were going to be crash landing on an alien planet. What would you save for humanity and for yourself as well to stop you from going completely insane? I think that's it then. So in the meantime, it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Good night.
Good night.